In the Indian Constitution, there's a legal shield so powerful it can never, ever be broken. Today we're diving deep into that shield, Article 20.
So, let's just kick things off with a question for you. Think about it. In a major crisis, a national emergency, a lot of your rights can be temporarily suspended. But there are a select few that are so fundamental, so absolutely essential, that they are completely untouchable. Any idea what they are?
Well, the answer is tucked away in Article 20. This is really the bedrock of protection against unfair criminal prosecution in India. And it doesn't matter who you are, a citizen, a foreigner, or even a corporation. This shield protects absolutely everyone within the country's borders.
All right, so Article 20 is basically split into three parts, three layers of protection, if you will. Let's start with the first one, which is all about fairness and timing.
This first clause protects you from something with a pretty fancy legal name, an ex post facto law. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually super simple. You can't be punished for breaking a law that didn't even exist when you did the act. It stops the government from changing the rules of the game after it's already been played.
So what does that actually mean for you? Well, it boils down to two really simple but super important protections. First, if what you did wasn't illegal at the time, you can't be found guilty of it later on. Period. And second, even if it was a crime, the punishment you get can't be harsher than what the law said it was back then. It's just a fundamental principle of justice. You have to know the rules before you can be punished for breaking them.
Okay, let's move on to the second shield. This one builds on that idea of a fair trial, and it's a concept you've probably heard a million times in movies and TV shows. Double jeopardy. The idea here is that the state gets one fair shot to prosecute you for a crime. If they fail, that's it. They don't get a do-over. This is so important because it prevents the state from just harassing someone over and over again, and it means an acquittal is actually final. It allows a person to move on with their life. But the law is super specific here. For double jeopardy protection to kick in, a few things have to be true. You can't just have been questioned, you have to have been formally prosecuted in a legitimate court. And that trial has to have reached a final verdict. Either you were convicted or you were acquitted. And the new charge, it has to be for the exact same offense.
And this is where a really important landmark case comes in. S.A. Venkataraman from 1954. This case clarified a huge point. It said that double jeopardy only applies to judicial courts, not to internal inquiries, like at your workplace. This means, for example, a government employee could get fired after a departmental inquiry and also face a criminal trial for the very same action. One is about their job, the other is about the law.
Okay, but this brings up a really interesting question, right? Article 20, Clause 2 specifically says you can't be prosecuted and punished twice. So, what if you were prosecuted and then found innocent? You were acquitted. Does that constitutional shield still protect you? So, here's the deal. While Article 20 itself is focused on preventing a second punishment, the legal system has your back. A different law, Section 300 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, to be exact, steps in and makes sure that an acquittal is also final. So the protection is there, it's just housed in a different part of the legal library, so to speak. All right, that brings us to the third and final shield under Article 20. And honestly, this might be the one that's most famous, the one everyone knows as the right against self-incrimination. The language right from the Constitution is just so clear, so powerful. What this really means is that the burden of proof is on the state. It is their job to prove you are guilty. It is not your job to help them do it. You cannot be forced or coerced into providing the very evidence that will be used to convict you. This is the absolute foundation of the right to remain silent.
But what does compelled to be a witness against himself actually look like in the real world? The true meaning of this right wasn't just written down once. It has been shaped and defined over decades by a series of huge, landmark Supreme Court cases. And this is where the law really comes to life.
For over 60 years, the courts have really wrestled with this right, constantly pushing and pulling at its boundaries. So let's walk through the 4 critical cases that literally built the right to silence as we understand it today. And this slide right here shows the single most important distinction which came out of the Coffee Kaluogad case. The court essentially drew a line in the sand. Article 20 protects you from what's called testimonial compulsion, being forced to use your own knowledge, your own words to incriminate yourself. But, and this is a big but, it does not protect your physical evidence. Things like your fingerprints, your handwriting, your DNA, those are considered physical characteristics, not testimony. The state is allowed to compel you to provide those. The other cases just kept building on that foundation.
MP Sharma established that this protection is broad, and it kicks in the moment you're formally accused in an FIR. Then, Nandini Sapathy was a total game changer. It extended the right to silence beyond the courtroom and into police interrogations. And most recently, the Selvi case tackled modern science, ruling that you can't be forced to undergo narco-analysis or lie detector tests because that's forcing testimony from your mind.
So we've gone through all three clauses and the key cases. Let's just pull back for a second and talk about why Article 20 as a whole is such a big deal, why it's a cornerstone of Indian law.
It really all boils down to these three pillars. First, fairness. It guarantees that the process will be just. Second, it's universal. It applies to every single person on Indian soil. And third, and this is absolutely the most critical point, it is emergency-proof. Even when the nation is in crisis, even when other fundamental rights are suspended, Article 20 stands firm. It is truly an unbreakable shield.
And that just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The courts have adapted this right from physical documents to mind mapping technology. But what's next? What does the right against self-incrimination even mean when your phone contains your entire life? Or when AI can analyze your every digital move? The principles of Article 20 are timeless, but applying them to the future, well, that's going to be the next great challenge for the law.